Today you see three neat garments. They have amazing cowl necklines. One is a little shallower, one is a little deep. So there's going to be an option that you like. And I've got a 1 hour sewing challenge for you. One of these versions, I thought maybe I can do it. Let's see if I could do it in under 60 minutes. Hi sewing friends, I'm Karina from liftingpzneedles.com. Welcome to this channel that is all about sewing. And I'm super excited to share three neat garments today. They are made from the same pattern. I've got tops, I've got all types of weather garments from the same pattern. And what I'm talking about is the new pattern from Love Notions called Chorus. Tammy did her magic and designed this pattern. Lots of options as usual. You always have so many things to mix and match when you buy a Love Notions patterns, and I think that's great value. In this case, you can sew a top or a dress. The dress can have two lengths. The dress has a separate bodice. It'll hit the waist, and then a different skirt piece sewn on. The skirt can reach the knee or can go really down low to your ankles. When you join these two seams of the bodice and the skirt, you're going to make a casing on the inside, and that's where you're going to thread your elastic. Super comfortable. Love these types of dresses with an elastic casing. They're just very relaxed to wear. The top is a little bit longer. Depending on your height, it'll be from the mid to the full hip. On the side seams, you have simple vents there. And then the star of the show is the neckline. It's a cowl neckline, lovely and draped. Now, it depends on how much drape you want and how much coverage you need for your upper chest. There's a shallow drape and a deep drape. So if you're happy to show more of your chest area, you can choose the deep drape. If you want something a little higher that covers a little bit more but still has that beautiful drape, go with the shallow. Now for the back, you can sew a regular back. It's a simple back, or you can also do a draped back. Now the drape on the back isn't as deep as the deep drape on the front, but it is nice and you're going to be able to see it. So you can choose either or. I have done one version with the drape at the back and a drape at the front, so it's a bit dramatic. And I've also done two versions with the simple back and the shallow drape. So I've tried to mix all the options that I could here with the three garments that I've chosen. You can make it sleeveless, so it could be perfect for summer. You can do short sleeves, you can do a split sleeve. I think that's really cute, and I have done that with one of my versions. You can do a long sleeve. So lots of things to mix and match here. Now they are extremely easy to sew because what finishes this cowl neckline is an integrated facing that's just folded to the inside. If you're doing the regular back though, you're going to have a separate facing. But you're going to see it is very, very easy to put together. And when I was planning to sew this, I thought, let's see if I can do a 1 hour challenge. Let's see if I can do it. So it's definitely one of those types that you could sew in an hour, but we'll see if I achieved it in a bit. Because the Chorus top and dress is brand new at Love Notions, it's got a nice little discount here for a week through next week, Wednesday the 5th of June. I believe it's about 25% off. Now if you add on my coupon code, you get an extra 10% off if you use it at checkout, so it brings the price down even more. I'll leave you my affiliate link in the description box and in the pinned comment right at the top there. Very easy for you to find. If you end up clicking on the link and purchasing, I do receive a small commission back, but it doesn't affect you whatsoever. You don't pay anything extra for that. It just means that you like my work enough to support me that way. I always try to bring you really fun content here, and it's a lot of work. One of the ways I make an income here on YouTube is with the affiliate links. So if you do use them, I'm always super grateful, and thank you so much. You need neat fabrics for this one. You need stretchy fabrics, at least 20% horizontally and vertically. So it's not a great deal of stretch that you need, but you do need that stretch. As usual, I'm going to answer your question before you ask me, can I do this with a drapey woven? No. Do not even go there because it's not going to fit. It is just not going to fit. It's not going to lie correctly. I would not even touch a woven fabric with this design at all. So I'm just answering before any of you want to ask. Absolutely no. That is my opinion. So I'll just follow the fabric recommendations here from the designer and use a neat fabric. Now because we have this lovely drape, you really do want neat fabric that has a nice drape. So fabrics I would not touch and go for a cotton lycra. I know a lot of you like sewing with cotton lycra, but that is a fabric that's pretty structured, even if it is lightweight. If you did your cowl neckline with that, it wouldn't look right. It would just look stiff and you just wouldn't get that nice look. So I would not go there. Something heavy like Ponte Roma or a Liverpool knit, No, just keep it lightweight. Rayon spandex, bamboo spandex, modal spandex. These are ones that your drape is going to be very dramatic. So even if you did the shallow drape, I think it would look a little deeper than what you expect, just because this fabric has so much vertical stretch. Same as if you choose the drape on the back. I think if you really want it dramatic and you really want it to shine, these fabrics would work. Just know that your top might look a little longer, your dress might look a little longer, just because these fabrics are like that. Other fabrics that would work well are double brush poly, single brush poly, ITY. I did actually make one of my tops in ITY. Athletic knits are amazing if they're drapey, and I have made a dress with an athletic knit. You can use a rib knit, you can use a sweater knit if it's nice and drapey and lightweight. That would take it into the winter category for us down here. For me here in Brazil, it got cold within the last few days, and it's a shock to my system. I can't even believe it. I've already put my electric blanket on the bed, and yeah, it's pretty cold. So the sweater version that I made is gorgeous. It's going to fit right into my needs right now. Another fabric I think that would work amazingly is rayon French terry. I love that fabric. I was umming and ahhing about my fabric choices, and I do have a French terry in there. It's just that I'm not in love with the color that much, so that's why I ended up using ITY instead. I think that's a very nice fabric. That's a little heavier than just the typical rayon spandex. That would also give you a nice drape and would look amazing. Now you see in my sewing video that I did add some extra steps with my sweater knit version. I used a little bit of non-stretch fusible interfacing to stabilize shoulders, and I also interfaced my back neckline for my sweater knit version. I didn't do that for the other ones. So that is something extra that you might consider handy. It just depends on the fabric choice, but it's not included in the pattern instructions. It's just something I did while trying to adapt to the sweater knit that I chose. The sizing goes from extra small to 5X, goes up to a 59.5-inch hip. You have a regular bust option and a full bust option. If you measure your high bust and your full bust measurement, see what the difference is, and it's 4 inches or less, you can use the regular bust option. That's what I've done because I have a 3-inch difference. If you have a larger sewing cup size, 4 inches or more, then you can use the full bust option and it will give you more space here at the bust. At the bust and the hips, you're going to have about 4 to 5 inches of ease, a little bit more if you're doing the full bust option. It doesn't come in at the waist too much. It's not completely boxy, so you're going to have about 10 inches of space at the waist. So it's a nice and comfortable top. It's nice and easy to wear, easy to fit as well. The top is meant to hit the mid hip to the full hip, depends on how tall you are. My sweater knit version, I did the original length as per the pattern, no changes, and I really like the length there. It ended up mid hip, so I like that. I wouldn't have wanted it longer. And for my ITY version, I ended up chopping 2 inches off the hem, so it's a little bit shorter. For the dress, I used the shorter skirt version, and mine is 1 inch longer just so that it hits above the knee. Otherwise, it would have been a tad short. Now, take into reference that I'm 5'8", and most of my length is from the waist to the floor, so it doesn't mean that because I had to add an inch, you need to add an inch. It's just what I did for my personal fitting. I do expect to add length in most patterns for Love Notions because they just make patterns for a person that's a little bit shorter than me. I made a size large for all of my versions, except that for my sweater knit version, I blended out to an extra large at the hips, not because I needed to, but because I just wanted this version to have a little bit more ease, just because it's a sweater knit, and I might want to wear a light layer underneath, like a tank top or a cami, so I thought I needed that a little bit of extra space there. And also the fabric was a little heavier, but for my dress and my ITY top, I made a size large, because that is my current size now at Love Notions. For the sewing, I have a really fun segment for you. It's another 1 hour sewing challenge. I posted one of these at the beginning of the month and a lot of you really enjoyed it. So I thought, why not try to sew this top in an hour? You're gonna see that I was thinking on the go and I decided to add mitered corners while I was doing this 1 hour challenge. So if I hadn't have done the mitered corners, it would have taken less time to create the piece. I thought, I'm sure I can do the mitered corners and still make the top in under 1 hour. Let's see if I achieved it. If you're watching the channel all the time, you would have seen that I already posted a separate video, a technique video on mitered corners a few hours ago. It shows you how to do the mitered corners in this one. Mitered corners are not included in the instructions in the pattern. I just decided to add those. So if you like them, have a look at that video. And if you absolutely loathe mitered corners, at the end of this video, I also showed you other ways that you can finish these simple vents on the side. So let's see if I was able to sew my sweater knit version in an hour. Here are the pattern pieces for this version of the chorus top. I'm using a really nice sweater knit. It's nice and drapey and it's going to work well with a cowl neckline. I have the simple back version here with the facing. There's other options that have a draped back as well. So then you would have this type of shape that the front does. That's the shoulder and that's the integrated facing. You would have that also on the back. But in this case, I'm going to have to sew the facing on separately because I want my back to be simple over here. This is on the fold, the front is also on the fold, and the type of drape that I have here for this cowl neckline is a shallow drape, so it won't be too deep. If you want to try this in a sweater knit, it just makes sense to have this neckline come up a little higher because it's for colder weather. For other types of fabrics, for hot weather, I would do the deep drape. The way that you sew the neckline is going to be exactly the same no matter if you're doing deep or shallow drape, and if you're doing the back drape as well, it won't really change. So I'm going to focus on showing you how to do this neckline. You're going to see how easy it is. Going towards the sides, you're going to have extra seam allowance there for little slits on the side, a slightly curved hem but not that much. It doesn't look that curved on the body. And here I have a long sleeve. There's also short sleeves, there's also a split sleeve, there's a few sleeve options, and you can also do it sleeveless if you want to. But this is a sweater knit, so it's going to be for cooler weather. In this case, we're going to start by sewing the facing onto the back first. If you want a regular back, that's what you do first. And there's one little extra step I've done over here on the shoulder area of the back, which is stabilize it. I cut my own little strips of non-stretch interfacing that's fusible, and I fuse it slightly away from the edge so that when I sew at 3/8 I'm going to catch it and it's going to stabilize the shoulder. The reason why I'm doing it with this knit is because it's a sweater knit. Sweater knits tend to have less recovery than other knits, and I'm doing a long sleeve here, so there's going to be the weight of the long sleeve there, and I don't want my shoulders to deform on the long run. The other thing I've done with my sweater knit here is interface the facing for the back. I wouldn't really do this with an athletic knit, but I just thought this fabric was a little flimsy and it would benefit from some tricot knit interfacing. That's just something I chose to do. It's nothing you have to do if you don't want to. It's not in the pattern. This top is so easy to sew. I thought, why not attempt a 1 hour sewing challenge again? It's very, very easy. I have done a few steps before thinking I was going to do this challenge, which is serge the edge of the back facing and serge the side seams. Honestly, that didn't take more than 5 minutes to do. I'm not counting cutting time in this hour either, or stabilizing the shoulders. That's something I've already done. And I'm going to sew this back facing on to the back neckline with 3/8 seam allowance. I'm going to be using a shallow zigzag. This is the width of the stitch, so it's almost flat. It'll be a slightly wavy stitch that will allow some give. If you're using a back piece that's draped, you won't need to do this step because the facing will already be integrated. Now, because this is a curved back neckline, we're going to do some snips. With like any facing, we're going to do some understitching. Extending this facing, pushing the seam allowance towards the facing. This is the way that we're going to understitch. So here we have the facing, it's interfaced, seam allowance goes this way. And we're going to sew on the edge here. I'm not going to do it from the very edge. I'm going to leave about 5/8 of an inch free here and on the other side as well. And that will just make it easier for us to sew this to the front later. This is another presser foot. This has an L on it. It's also a type of blind hem presser foot, but different. When you move this, it moves this edge in or out. So you can actually get whatever seam allowance you want, and it's really helpful. I've set it here to about 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to use this beautiful presser foot that I always use. It does the edge stitching really neatly, and I can still do a narrow zigzag in here with this presser foot. This is the shape that we're going to get here, like this. This is the back shoulder seam that's stabilized. This is the facing. So we're going to just put this on the table. This is how this is going to look. We're going to get this angle over here. We're going to get our front I have already serged the top edge of this integrated facing, as you can see. If you don't do it now, it'll be really hard to do later. And so this is gonna go on top, and you can see this shape is gonna match this shape over here. I'm gonna sew with this on the top over here where the stabilized area is. I'm gonna match this angle here and pin it together. This interfacing is gonna make it nice and stable. So we're gonna sew up here, we're gonna pivot and keep going, and it's done at 3/8 of an inch. And then we can actually serge this so it's nice and neat. And I suggest you sew this step with a sewing machine. You can't really get the angle correctly with just the serger on this step. There are lots of things you can do with the serger for this pattern, but I would suggest that this is not one of them. This is why I didn't want the understitching here, because it can get bulky. So I don't have understitching in this little corner. I'm gonna hand crank right up to that stitch and then pivot, move all of this way, and keep going. This is how it looks. I'm gonna serge this, and then we need to snip into here so that this can actually fold onto each other properly. But let's get it serged first. Okay, here we are. This is how it looks, serged and sewn. And I'm gonna snip right next to the seam, right up to there. And then this is gonna be free now. What I'd like to do is push the seam allowances to different directions. So here I want to push this one towards the back, and here I want to push it towards the front. And then when I put them on top of each other, they're going to be less bulky in the end. And that's how this is going to be. It's super neat. Now on the front, this integrated facing will just fold in and there's no extra facing, but on the back we will have a facing right there. And this is what's going to give us this beautiful drape, and this back neckline is going to keep it nice and stable. But for now, we don't need to do anything else here. We still have to sew the sleeves over here, and at the end, I'm just going to give it a quick hand tack over here on the seam allowance so that this doesn't move and flop around inside. But for now, that's all. I'm going to repeat this for the next shoulder. I'm going to show you what happens when you have front and the back also draped. So this is another version, but you can see that both the front and the back have the same type of integrated facing. That means we're going to have drape both on the front and the back. In this case, it's much easier because you don't have to sew that back facing, but we're still going to get the same type of angle that we sew together, we serge and we snip. It's exactly the same, just easier. So if you want an easier version, choose one with the back and the front draped, and it will be even faster than what I'm doing where there's a separate facing on the back. I've also snipped it there to allow this to fold over. And if you push the seam allowances in different directions, it will end up less bulky right there. The sewing technique is actually the same because we get the same type of angle whether we're doing the back facing or not. Okay, so here I'm going to do the other shoulder. I'm going to repeat the same steps. At this point, I still have 41 minutes left to sew, which means I only took 20 minutes to do the shoulders. At this point, you can sew your sleeves in on the flat. So if you like that method, do that now. I'm going to sew my sleeves on the round. So at this point, I'm going to sew side seams. Okay, here are my side seams. You can see we have little slits here, and I have already serged the edges. It just makes everything easier. And sewing the side seam with a straight stitch when you have a slit is just so much easier. So you can see where there's a dot, that's where I'm going to sew and reinforce, leave the rest open. And then from the top here, I'm going to sew at 3/8 seam allowance. I'm still using my narrow zigzag for this. Okay, I like to sew my sleeves on the round, so I've got them pinned over here. This is one I'm not going to sew on the sewing machine. I'm going to sew it on the serger only. I don't have any slits or special details that I need the sewing machine for here. So I'm just going to go ahead and serge this. When I sew this to the armhole, it's also going to be just on the serger and not on the sewing machine. This is at 3/8, which means I'm trimming off a little bit as I serge. I have the raw edges at the bottom, so I'm also going to serge that right away so that it's ready. I actually prefer hemming this before even setting it in. It's just so much easier. Whenever I serge something that finishes on the round like this, I don't want to just cut it off because it can unravel a bit. So I can actually see the thread, not the woolly nylon, and just pull them out. Then all of this is undone and I can just knot it there, and it's really nice and neat. I do this everywhere where I just don't want to snip and it can get messy. That is a neat way to finish something that you've serged on the round. Now I'm just going to repeat the same with the other sleeve. At this point, I'm going to sew the hem of the sleeves. I have folded it up by 1 inch, and I think this sweater knit is not too slippery or too hard to work with. So I'm just going to go ahead and sew it without hand basting. I think for the hem of the sweater, for the bottom hem, I am going to hand baste because it's slightly curved. So I'm just going to sew it here from the wrong side, and I'm going to use my narrow zigzag again to do this. It's nice and discreet, and it'll blend into the sweater knit really easily. The feet of the bottom here is nice and snug against my machine, but it's not being stretched out. That's how the hem looks. I think it's really nice. The narrow zigzag will allow the stretch. And I always just turn my sleeves right sides out and put them aside because this is actually the last thing that I do. I have these little slits here, and I'm going to do quick mitered corners instead of just folding it like this and like that, or the other way around, folding it up like that, the hem and then the slit. Perfectly fine. I do that sometimes, but I want to do the mitered corners this time. And we're going to have a beautiful mitered corner where you have the same seam allowance here on the slit and the same hem allowance down here, and it's super neat. So I'm going to repeat that 3 more times and then hand baste all of this and then top stitch, and it'll be done in all one step. Okay, the mitered corners are done. Now I'm just going to hand baste everything in place. And the hand basting is very fast. I'm doing humongous stitches, nothing really special here. The only reason I'm doing it is because I really want it to be really smooth. I don't want to worry about anything moving. It's a larger area compared to the sleeve one where it was just very small and very straight. Whereas here there's a tiny bit of a curve here. So I think hems are very important. If it's slightly off, it can throw the whole look of the garment off. And I think hems are very important. So I do everything I can to get a nice result, and hand basting is part of it. And not just for sewing with the sewing machine, it could be the same thing for cover stitching. You know, you don't want your forward underneath to move or you can't control it. And I don't really think that clips or pins do an amazing job at doing that. So I'm not sure if I'm going to make the hour just because I added these mitered corners in the end that weren't part of the pattern. If I just folded the seam allowance and hem allowance in, I'm sure I would have already finished, but I wanted to do the mitered corners. At this point, I have 7.5 minutes left to sew this whole hem and both the sleeves. So I'm slightly concerned I'm not going to make it, but oh well. I'm happy with the hand basting here that I don't have to take out pins while I'm sewing, and I'm just going around all the edge here, including the little slits, all in one go. Having the hand basting there gives me a lot of peace of mind that this is going to turn out to be a lovely hem. The hem is done, and I have 4 minutes and 27 seconds left to sew on both sleeves. Now this is going to be super easy because knit sleeves are designed 1-to-1, so the sleeve matches the armhole perfectly. I don't have to gather. If this were a woven sleeve, I would be in serious problems to finish under 1 hour. But let's see if I can sew both sleeves in. I've got about 2 minutes per sleeve. It should be okay. I have already done the hem of the sleeve. So this is literally the last step to finish this chorus sweater knit top. I'm super excited, and let's see, just rushing through here. I didn't even have time to adjust the little camera so you can see what I'm doing, but I am sewing this on the round and it's going super smoothly. And I'm just going to check that I have a few seconds left. 3, 2, 1, 0, and I did it. I literally had no seconds to spare. Okay, to be fair, if I hadn't have done the mitered corners, I probably would have finished about 5 minutes ago because that was an extra step that was not in the pattern, and it took a little while to measure everything. 1 hour to sew this top. Yay! When I finished sewing that last sleeve on the serger, I picked up the phone and it was going 1 second to 0, and then it started saying timer and sounding and everything. So I literally finished when the timer said 0. So I officially did finish in 1 hour. Now, I would have had more seconds to spare if I hadn't been dropping the phone and looking at the timer so many times. If I hadn't have done the mitered corners. In the middle in there, the battery of the little camera I used to film the sewing actually died on me. I had to go and change it. So there were a lot of barriers that happened to me while I was trying to do this in under an hour. In spite of all those things, I still made it in an hour. So I was also filming a tutorial and explaining everything. So I'm pretty sure if I hadn't have been filming and all those things hadn't happened, I would have been done in about 50 minutes, probably. Maybe it can take you a bit less because you're not filming a tutorial like I was. So Definitely doable. Definitely it will take you not the whole day to achieve. You can have a beautiful garment in a short space of time, which is always so satisfying. This is my winter version of the chorus. I really love this sweater knit. I actually showed my son a few options of sweater knits I had, and he chose this one because he liked it and I like it as well. This one has the long sleeves right here, easy to sew. And then this has the shallow drape. I thought it made more sense to have a higher coverage for winter because it's cold. So I don't want a deep drape on a sweater knit. So that's what I have right there. And on the back I have my facing that's interfaced. I thought it was just gonna lie nicer inside and not flop about. The fabric was a little bit flimsy that way. So that's why I did that, and we get a really nice smooth result on the back. There's understitching in there, so you can't really see anything here. It's very, very clean. And then the integrated facing on the front is just folded in, serged edge right there, and it just goes in like that, and it's so, so easy. Gorgeous mitered corners, so worth doing. I always love doing them, and it's very rare that I don't do a mitered corner when I have the time. I didn't have time in this opportunity, but I still made myself some time, and I'm just so happy with this one. It's just so lovely. I can't wait to wear it, and it's going to be very soon because it's actually quite cold right now. So let's see this one styled a few ways. Here is my amazing chorus sweater. It's a sweater knit, and this is the version I was sewing in the 1 hour challenge. You can see I did sew in an hour. This one has the original length of the pattern. It hits my mid hip for my height, and I think it's lovely like this. I wouldn't make it longer or shorter for a sweater. And this time I blended out to an extra large at the hips, just because I wanted the style to have a little bit more ease, just because it's a sweater and I might want to wear a tank underneath and have the other versions are all size large. On the side is a little vent there. I added my own mitered corners, and I have the shallow drape option, just because it's a sweater knit and I want to be warm in the winter. So it's low enough to create an impact, but not too low to expose to my skin and get cold. I have the regular facing at the back that you sew in. That's a really smooth finish there, and it's just so lovely. The sweater knit was an amazing choice. I really love this print, and you can still get that drape feature there. I think it's lovely. Very easy to sew. This sleeve went in and took me 2 minutes to set them in each. And there is the integrated facing there. I think you should always search that just for peace of mind. I've got it paired with white flared pants that are ready to wear, and I really like it because you have that color in the print there. So this is lovely, love it. Here are my wide leg glissando pants again, and the more I see them, the more I want to take them in at the sides a little bit. This would be a great autumn look for me, and if I got colder, I would just wear booties underneath instead of these shoes. So there's always many ways to change it up with the shoes. Love the brown tones, especially now that I'm in autumn. I know most of you are in summer, but I'm totally opposite, and I'm glad I have this sweater that I can wear right now because it's cold right now. When I made the brown glissando pants with the same fabric, I made the brown glissando skirt, and it's beautiful. It goes perfectly. I have brown loafers there. These are really casual look for me, but I made a little bit of an effort. I have a really nice bag in beige that matches the tone of the print in there. The print is just so lovely, and I love this length for a sweater to be worn with a skirt like this that's not too tight. So lovely. I love this pairing, and if it got really cold, I could wear tights underneath as well. So lots of options for styling. I'm sure I have many more in my wardrobe, but this is what I came up with today. The second version I'm going to show you has the deep drape on the front and the draped back. So it's draped everywhere, it's sleeveless, and it's an ITY, and this is my shorter version, 2 inches shorter than the original length. For this one, I decided to just sew the side seams and get rid of the vent right there. Sometimes you can do without, especially if it's a shorter top. It didn't make sense to have a vent that was going to end up being like an inch. So the vent is not here. It's a very drapey ITY. I think it's a really good fabric choice. The print is a little bit wild. There's brown, black, burgundy, beige, and a sort of terracotta, like rust color right there. I really like it. And this is the drape on the front. This is the drape on the back. Actually, the drape on the back is a little less than the drape on the front, but when you look at it and when you're trying to put on your garment, it's hard to tell the difference, and you might get confused which is the front and which is the back. Now, the way that I know what's the back and what's the front is where I press my seam allowance. My seam allowance is always pressed towards the back. So if I just look like that, then I'll easily know which is the front and which is the back. So that's how it looks. Now, I'm going to show you a little clip of the fitting process, and this is described in the pattern that can happen to you. If you're doing deep drape and the drape at the back, this ends up really wide and it can end up looking like an off-the-shoulder top, and then you can lose all the drape and all the cowl feature. So let me show you how that looks like, but there's a really quick and easy solution, which is to sew a little bra keeper inside on the seam, and then you can wrap that around your bra and then it'll stay in place. I'm just marking there in the mirror where my bra actually sits on my shoulder, where it naturally is going to sit. And I'm marking with pins the distance there so that I can sew that bra keeper there. On the inside, I have a snap. This is a snap that has the opening where you click into it. And on this piece of bias tape that I sewed here is the other part of the snap that goes into the opening, like that. And so when I wear it, I put my bra strap through there and then I click it like this. I am planning to sew a separate tutorial on how to do this. It's super easy. I'm planning to sew a dress where I think this is going to be necessary. The video is long enough and I didn't want to add more and more and more to it. But I am going to show you how to do it with the things that you have on hand. I know you can buy these bra keepers and in little packs where the snaps are already on a ribbon and such. They're not very cheap. They're not cheap at all. And I was able to make mine for next to nothing because I have a whole packet of sewing snaps. And bias tape, I have so much of that. So it was just a really easy piece. It was just something really easy to do. And I did it all by hand, like the whole thing is done by hand. So you're gonna see that when I wear it, this stays really nicely because the seam is caught in the bra keeper. There's no risk of this falling off your shoulders, which is something that is described that can happen. It's also described that you can do this little bra keeper thing in the pattern. So just so you know, it is going to happen if you don't do anything about it. Let's see this one on. Here is my chorus top in an ITY. This one is shorter than the original, just my personal preference. It's 2 inches shorter. I also eliminated the vents on the side, so it's just a regular seam. And this time I have the deep drape in the front and I have the drape option in the back as well. There you can see this hits a high hip and I really like this length, especially for an A-line skirt like this one. ITY is really nice and floaty. And up closer you're gonna see more details with the neckline. The neckline is just gorgeous. I love how this top looks. That drape at the back is something really different and really, really pretty. I think having it in the front and the back is gold. Up closer you can see my sleeveless armhole. It's finished with binding. And this is a deep drape. Even though it's a deep drape, I'm still not showing anything, so I'm quite happy. Now you can see that my shoulders are staying put. They're not falling off, but they would if I hadn't have added a little type of snap bra keeper on the inside. So in there I have a little piece of binding with sewing snaps to keep it sort of anchored onto my bra strap, and that keeps it in place. Really love that. Here I've got my chorus top paired over wide leg pants. They're dark brown and one of the colors in this print is dark brown. Hard to see from far away. This is why I wanted my top shorter, so that I could wear this with wider leg styles at the bottom. So that is the reasoning, and also just because I wanted to do something different and not everything has to be long. So I really love how this looks over the wide leg pants. These are the glissando pants from Love Notions in linen, and I do realize I need to take them in a little bit on the sides. They are looking a little bit baggy, but because we sew, that's really easy for us to do, right? Here is my ITY chorus top again, this time with pants that are a little bit more fitted. Now I think I can get away with fitted pants like these, even though this is a shorter top, and the reason is because they're flared at the bottom. If this was a skinny style where it went all the way down to my ankle, I would not wear a short top like this. But with this one, I think I can push the boundaries a little bit and wear a shorter top with fitted pants just because they flare out at the bottom. And they're black, you can't go wrong. There is black in the print. This is my last version, and this is a dress. This has a shallow drape as well. This has a regular back with the facing tucked in there. So that looks like a normal top, but on the front you have the shallow drape. This is an athletic knit, medium weight, very drapey, so I think it was appropriate, and I love it in navy. I have the split hem here, which is just 2 pieces. It's just like sewing on a regular sleeve. It's just that on the top you have a tiny bit of an overlap that you baste, and then you just sew your sleeve in like normal. Down here we have the bodice and then the skirt. Now when you attach them, they fit 1-to-1. You sew with a 1-inch hem allowance, you serge it and you sew it, and that will give you a gap inside. That's where you sew the elastic in, and it's top stitched. Very, very easy, and it's very well described in the pattern instructions, so you're not going to have any problem. So if you have a casing that's 1 inch, you're going to use a smaller elastic inside. 1/2 inch is good. So here you can see that seam that we did with 1-inch hem allowance. You serge the edge, you press it down towards the skirt, and then you sew it all the way around. You leave yourself a gap, you thread your elastic through, and then you close the gap, and voila. Really nice casing on the inside. I'm not gonna lie and say that threading the elastic through took like 2 minutes, because it took ages. It kept twisting inside, it kept moving. My elastic wasn't that firm, it was a little bit flimsy. My fault for using that type of elastic. I should have chosen something better quality, but it's what I had on hand. So depending on the type of elastic, it could take you a while to thread it through neatly and like just stay smooth and not twisting in there. I think I definitely would not be able to sew the dress version in 1 hour. Yeah, it just took a little longer, but it's still something that's very easy to do, that's not going to take you days and days and days to do, hours and hours upon hours, no. But that's why I decided to not film a 1 hour challenge sewing a dress, because there's no way I could have done it. Let's see this one styled a few ways, and with a few toppers as well, casual and dressy. Here is my chorus dress in a navy blue athletic knit. I have sewn a size large. My skirt is 1 inch longer than the original length. No changes made to the bodice. I have sleeves that are split. This is one of the options, and a shallow drape on the front. You're going to see all the details up closer. It's such a beautiful dress, and maybe you won't notice, but I did do my hem by hand. It's something I really wanted to do, and I did it because I think the machine would have ruined it. It's right above the knee where I need it. The casing that it joins the bodice to the skirt with the elastic inside is just gold. It's just so comfortable. You don't have to worry about anything being tight and constrictive. Very nice, very wearable. I always love a feature like this because it's just so easy to whip up and wear. Up higher you can see my shallow drape. I think this option for the cowl neckline is gold because not everyone wants a deeper drape. So this is lovely. I have the split sleeves here and the regular back, so no drape at the back, and I just love how this bodice fits and how the dress looks like in general. Up closer you can see the drape, and that integrated facing is really neat and folded into the inside. If you don't like the split sleeves, you can do a regular sleeve instead. I just like it, and that's the integrated facing there that is just folded to the inside and just lies in there very nicely. This time it's just shoes and a bag, pink to spice it up a little bit, but next you'll see it styled with toppers in different styles, a bit more dressy and also casual. Here is my chorus dress in a little bit of a casual way for autumn. I've got beige booties that are super nice and comfy with a denim jacket, but it's actually made in a canvas with a print, beige with red. I think this jacket is hard to style because there are not many things that can go with it, but I think the navy dress underneath is a perfect match. I'm really happy I have something to wear with this jacket now. You know, having a statement jacket can sometimes be harder to style, but I have this option now and I'm really happy with how this looks. I like that the skirt is not too full and it's not a pencil skirt either, so it's not like it's something voluminous under the jacket, and I really love how that looks. Also, that neckline is not too bulky underneath the jacket, so I'm very happy with this outfit. Next one is very casual. This jacket is a constellation. It's also a pattern from Love Notions where I've done a full zipper instead of a half zipper, and I've lined it. I have a hood version, and this is a print cotton lycra. It's a lightweight type of jacket, and I've got some blue sneakers. I think the dress can go really well with a casual vibe as well. I love it. You can't go wrong if you have navy and navy going together because there's a lot of blue and navy in the jacket. So yeah, I'm glad I pulled this outfit together because I really love it. Next one's a little dressier. This is a bomber jacket in a crepe. It's lined, it's a beautiful jacket, and also it's a little bit harder to style because it's navy and it's got a lot of print in there. The navy chorus dress underneath is perfect. I've chosen to use shoes and a handbag that match my skin tone closely just to keep that neutral and out of the picture. You know, when you have a loud jacket like this, I think you should keep your accessories very muted. So let's just let the dress and the jacket shine here and ignore the accessories. Although they are there, you need to wear shoes. I know I'm really going to enjoy this outfit when I get the chance to wear it because this navy dress was really missing in my wardrobe and I'm really happy I have it now. I really love my 3 versions. I'm glad I have them for different occasions. A dress is always welcome in my wardrobe. Lovely top. I know I'm going to make more tops because this is so lovely. And the bra keeper inside is a great idea to add on. You can enjoy that deeper drape without the fear of this falling over. And most patterns don't have a drape at the back. That's something new here and I really enjoyed that as well. And what to say, this one is just amazing and I'm going to be able to wear it now when it's cold. So you can make a chorus for winter, for summer, for whatever you want. It just depends on your fabric. And any time of the year, you can enjoy this beautiful pattern. Don't forget that the chorus pattern is on sale through next week, Wednesday the 5th of June. Nice little discount for you to enjoy. Always find my links in the description box and also in the pinned comment. Very easy to find. I hope this was an enjoyable episode for you. I had a blast making these. I know you're going to enjoy them as well. That's all from me and I'll see you again very soon on this channel with more sewing. Bye!